Welcome to Take a Breath, a podcast for creating practical calm in the messy middle of midlife. I'm Polly, and this is your space to pause. Because life in midlife is full on, between work, family, menopause, and the mental load, your nervous system can easily end up in constant overdrive, leaving you feeling exhausted, reactive, and overwhelmed by even the smallest things. Each week, I'll share my own tools alongside honest conversations and practical nervous system support to help you create more calm, peace, joy, and inner steadiness, not by escaping your life, because that's totally unrealistic, but by meeting it differently. So whenever you're ready, let's take a breath in through the nose. Feel your belly rise, your ribs expand, and as you exhale, let's begin. Hello, and welcome back to Take a Breath. Now today I want to talk about pressure and guilt, two things which I'm sure you are very familiar with. I was coaching a client this week about this exact topic, and that session has inspired me to talk about this, as I really know it's something which I have really struggled with, and I know is so common for many of us, and adds hugely to our midlife stress more than anything, these feelings of pressure and guilt that we put onto ourselves. I have always been someone who has put a lot of pressure on myself. When I was a teacher, I was often one of the first people in school in the morning. I was always going over and above what I actually really needed to do, just to make sure everything was as good as it could possibly be. And I know there was a bit of perfectionism in there, which is actually not a great trait when you're being a teacher, because the job is never done. I worked really hard outside of school hours. I would take work home with me, and I thought about it constantly. And honestly, that pattern didn't really stop when I left teaching. The same thing showed up in my business. So firstly, that was my tuition business. And now my coaching business. I've worked bloody hard. And when I look back, really, honestly, there are moments that really do make me feel a little bit sad. So when my kids were younger, honestly, too often I was that mum saying, in a minute, just let me finish what I'm doing. When they just wanted something from me, they wanted to play with me or do something with me, I was the one going, I've just got to finish this email, or I've just got to do this one more task. And really what I should have been doing is stopping what I was doing and being fully present with them. I genuinely believed that if I wanted to be successful, I had to put every spare moment into my work. There's always something to do. And particularly if you have your own business, but also if you work for someone else, often you've got a pressure from above and there's always something else to do. And it's very easy to feel guilty if you're not working. I certainly did. But at the same time as that, I know I was snappy, I was exhausted, and even when I was physically with the kids, I kind of wasn't really there. I was thinking about the next task I had to do, or thinking about the next email I had to write. But it really was the only way I knew how at the time. I wasn't doing anything wrong in particular. I was just doing what I'd learned. I didn't know a different way. So many of us have absorbed this message from society, from school, from our parents, from the culture that we've grown up in, that to be successful, you have to work harder than everyone else. You have to really grind, you have to struggle, you have to push through. But the question I want to pose to you today is this actually the truth? Or is it just a story, a belief that we've inherited? Because now I'm learning a different way. And I'll be honest, I'm not there yet. It's still very, very much work in progress, but I'm leaning into a different way. And this way is feeling a lot nicer. So it's a way that doesn't rely on constant pressure. And we are often the ones putting the pressure on ourselves. Yes, you might have pressure from a boss as well, but often I know for me, it's my own pressure that I am enforcing on myself. This different way is also a way that doesn't require guilt as motivation. And it's a way that instead allows ambition, and I'll call it alignment. And that's when, by alignment, what I mean is when we feel calm and we feel in flow to coexist. So that was my client's question to me last week. She asked me, is it even possible to approach ambition from a place of alignment rather than pressure? And I 100% believe that it is. Now, it's not about doing less or caring less, because that is not always possible if we have ambitious goals. It's more about understanding what's driving the push and how to approach ambition in whatever form that is for us, from a place that feels exciting and fun and flowy and easy, all of which point to you being in true alignment rather than coming at it from a place of pressure. So let's just talk a little about pressure and guilt. Both are two forces that many of us have learned to rely on. Not at all because they feel good, because they don't, but because for a while they actually do work. They get us to take action, they get us to meet our deadlines and to push through when often things feel so full on and demanding. For many of us, they've become the fuel that keeps everything moving forward. The trouble is, they don't just motivate us, often they dominate. And over time, so much pressure squeezes the joy out of what we're doing. And when that happens, our creativity narrows and everything starts to feel really heavy, full of effort, and pretty damn serious. And that's not really where we want to be when we're doing something that perhaps we once loved. And that's because, as I've said, most of us were taught directly or indirectly that pressure equals progress. That if we're not a little stressed or a little guilty or a little on edge, that we're probably not doing enough. And of course, that makes sense. We want to do well. We want to achieve our goals. We want to be good at our jobs and present with our children and supportive partners and reliable friends. We want to do it all. We do not want to drop the ball. So we put all this pressure onto ourselves. And of course, as I said, that pressure can work in the short term, because those feelings do sharpen our focus. They give us a burst of adrenaline. They help us meet those deadlines. And from a nervous system point of view, that's because they activate our stress response. So our adrenaline and our cortisol rise and our attention narrows and action becomes easier, because that's what the stress response is all about. It's about motivating us to take action. The problem comes when this becomes the default, because our bodies were never designed to live in a constant, prolonged state of stress. So when pressure is always on us, our nervous system stays on high alert, our decision making becomes really quite rigid because we're in this hyper focus mode, limiting our ability to be flexible in our thinking, to think outside the box, or to be creative. And that means we're more reactive, we're more irritable, we're less patient, and eventually we're going to hit a wall. So this is the push, collapse, guilt cycle. So you're pushing yourself more and more to carry on. So you push yourself through the tiredness. You then ignore the signals that you're absolutely knackered and you might need to take a break. And you just keep going because you feel you have no choice, that you absolutely have to. And then what happens is that your system just goes, enough is enough. That's when your energy totally drops. You lose your motivation, you're feeling flat, snappy, exhausted, all the things, sometimes even really resentful. And this is often when you might get ill, you get a cold, and generally you feel pretty shit. And instead of seeing all of those signs as information telling you that really you've got to break this cycle, guilt then comes and steps in, because then you say to yourself, I've just got to get on with this. I've got to do this. I should be able to cope. I'm so behind. I've got to meet this deadline. And you start feeling guilty, and that becomes your motivator. So it's almost like your pressure is the stick, it's beating you from behind, saying, right, keep going, keep going. And then your guilt steps in when you're absolutely exhausted, and that is like becomes the whip. That's whipping you. Keep going, keep going. And both of them are these forces which are coming from behind, pushing you. And yes, in the short term, they get things moving again. But over time, this cycle exhausts your nervous system. The chronic stress keeps your cortisol levels elevated, which affects a whole load of things, from your sleep to your mood to your hormones, your focus, all of it, not least your emotions. This is when you really are exhausted and miserable and snappy and all the things you don't want to be. And that enforces more guilt as well. So it's not great. So if you're listening and thinking, oh God, this is me, remember, there is nothing wrong with you. This is conditioning. You're running on old beliefs which are so embedded in your neural pathways that it's just your automatic response. Most of us were never taught to work with our nervous systems or how to listen to the signs, particularly as women. We've only really been taught how to override them, just to keep pushing. Men are much better at working on a 24-hour cycle. That is how they are built to work. Whereas as women, we're just not. We are cyclical beings, and we tend to work more on a 28-day cycle. So this isn't about getting rid of pressure or guilt forever, because that neural pathway is already there, and sometimes they are helpful and they will probably always show up from time to time. But what we want to do instead is we want to update your default. We want to update the software that you always fall back into. And how do we do this? Well, we just create new pathways, new neural pathways. So the old neural pathway, that is the guilt and the pressure, think of that a bit like the M25. So here in the UK, the M25 is the big ring road around London. It's about 4 lanes. I don't know if it goes to 5 lanes. Anyway, it's one of our biggest motorways. And it is probably where the guilt and the pressure is like in your brain. So that's a really well-trodden path. It's where it's easy for you to default to. What we want to try and do now is create a new pathway as big as that, but we're not going to start as big as that. We're going to start more like with an overgrown brambly footpath, which is going to feel a lot harder to get through. It's going to take time to form because it's not so well trodden yet. But with practice, with walking down this path again and again, we get rid of the brambles, we can widen the pathway, it begins to get easier and easier to move through. This way we can create new software that we want to move towards in order to motivate us to create, to take actions. And this is how we create new beliefs and new habits. So the new pathway we want to learn, instead of the pressure and the guilt, is a way of moving forward that still honors your ambition, but doesn't require you to burn yourself out to get there. And as I said, I believe this is possible. So you don't have to do less, because often that can be unrealistic, although it is obviously something to look at if you are absolutely full on and haven't got a moment to do anything. But we can also really look about choosing a different fuel. So one that inspires you to take the action and meet the deadlines, rather than the pressure and the pushing and the guilt. So it's simply that you've been running on an old software, which is now clunky and outdated and a little bit glitchy. So we just need an upgrade. Now, when I was working with this client last week, she very much noticed a pattern that her fuel to get her to take the action she wanted was very much this one of pressure and guilt. So she'd beat herself with those sticks to try and get her to take the action that she wanted. And that way of working had been modeled to her as she grew up. It was really apparent. And so she just didn't know a different way. So instead, I asked her to think of times when she'd felt really inspired to take action. And for her, it was when she was being really playful, when she could let go of the results and actually just really just play and create and just make everything a little bit more fun. And when she started talking about this in this way, which she had experienced these feelings before, her whole body language changed, her face lit up. So we really tapped into these feelings. And a great way to do this is through breath work. You get to release the unhelpful, stagnant energy, and you then get to step into the feelings and the energy that you want to feel. It's actually a form of hypnotherapy. It's very similar to hypnotherapy. You dial up the feelings you want to create, and those are the feelings which you then can start to create this new neural pathway. And the more that you practice feeling this way, the more that pathway starts to grow and eventually becomes that big motorway. So in these sessions, I always give the recordings of these practices afterwards, which I always set to music and which can always be practiced again and again, because they really do help embed the feelings and these new ways of thinking, and it just helps make it your new normal. So it really is a practice. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a practice which you get to do. And then on top of that, there are 5 simple steps which I would suggest, which you can do on a regular basis, which just keep updating this software. So for this client, I suggest that she listens to the recording as often as she can, particularly before she wants to do any of the work that she wants to do. And then there are 5 simple steps to keep updating this software, which I'm just going to run through now, which hopefully you will find helpful too. So the first step I will only ever recommend brands that I know, love, and use myself. And one of those is Ancient and Brave. Honestly, they've become part of my daily habits. The very first thing I do every morning is pour myself a big glass of water with their true hydration in it. It feels like such a simple ritual, but it really sets me up for the day. And I know I'm properly rehydrating with their blend of electrolytes and minerals, especially before I exercise, which I always do in the morning. Then later on, when I make my coffee, I stir in their true collagen powder into the coffee. Now, it blends in straight away, no fuss, there's no taste, and collagen is something we naturally lose as we age, but it's so important for our skin, joints, and overall vitality. Now, I'll be honest, Ancient and Brave may cost a little more than some of the tubs you'll spot on supermarket shelves, but the difference is you're getting the highest quality ingredients, sourced with integrity and tested to a higher standard, and absolutely no nasties added. That's why I trust them and why I think they're worth every penny. And because I want you to be able to try them out for yourself, I've got a special offer for you. As a listener of this podcast, you can get 20% off your very first order. All you need to do is click the link in the show notes and pop in the code POLYW20 at checkout. They've got more than just collagen and hydration too. They've got creatine, they've got blends, supplements. So it's a perfect chance to explore their range and make the most of that 20% off. As always, is awareness. The first step to any change is always awareness. And this is simply just about catching yourself when the thought or the feeling shows up that you don't want. So you can apply this to anything, but here we're talking about pressure and guilt. So when you notice that guilt creeping in or that constant pressure on your back, simply catch it, notice it, and just go, oh, with curiosity, there it is. That's my current software showing up. There it is. Okay. So when you catch yourself, just look out for the shoulds. I should be doing this. I should be doing more. I've got to. And then just pause and just notice it and name it. There it is. Because a thought is simply that old belief, that old conditioning firing. That is all. And the moment you catch it and you name it, like, oh, there's the guilt, there it is again, or there's that pressure trying to motivate me, you immediately create a little bit of distance. And in that space, that is when you start to get a choice. So really lean into curiosity here. It just is like, oh, okay, that's interesting. There it is again. That's that neural pathway firing up again. Stay well away from judging yourself like, oh God, there it is again. Stay away from that. Just be curious. Oh my goodness, how funny. There it is again. That is the first step. Then the second step is we want to break the pattern, okay? Because that pattern is just coming back again and again. And there are two ways we're going to do this. So the next step is with the breath, because if we can bring ourselves back into the body with 3 deep breaths, we're simply just signaling to our nervous system, okay, we're breaking the cycle, we're calm, we're moving out of that flight or flight mode, and we're interrupting this familiar pattern and choosing something different. So as I always say, deep breath in through the nose, low into the belly. Feel the ribs expand. So if you put your hands around your lower 2 ribs, when you take a breath in, you should feel the belly rise, but more importantly, you should feel those hands expand in a 360 lateral way. So that is the deep breath. We want to try and keep the shoulders still. They shouldn't rise, but the hands around your ribs should expand outwards. So 3 deep breaths like that. Try and let the exhale be a little longer than the inhale. That immediately helps us shift into our parasympathetic side of our nervous system. And then step 3 is add some gratitude. And that is because gratitude is one of the fastest ways to shift out of a negative thought spiral, because our emotions tend to move in spirals rather than straight lines. I'd really recommend going and having a look up an emotional spiral diagram online. There are loads and loads of them. These diagrams really show how, they categorize emotions from high frequency positive feelings to low frequency negative ones. So it shows how we can move up or down this scale with the goal of shifting from lower vibration emotions towards the higher ones. So the upward spiral lists positive emotions like joy and love and freedom and passion. And the downward spiral ones include emotions such as guilt and hatred and anger. You then have emotions like boredom, which are positioned as neutral, kind of in the middle of the scale. So when we're caught in a negative spiral, what happens is one feeling, well, actually, this is the same also for when you're in a positive spiral, but what's happening is one feeling is feeding a thought, and that thought fuels another feeling. And we can quickly find ourselves moving down, but the same is true in the opposite direction. So a small positive shift can start an upward spiral, and shifting into gratitude is a great way to shift from going down the spiral to moving up. So it doesn't have to be a huge bit of gratitude, but it does just need to be something that feels believable. So, for example, when you feel that familiar pressure or guilt, you could very simply just say, okay, get curious, there it is. I can feel the guilt, I can feel the pressure, and then just kind of almost be grateful that it's there. Thanks, guilt and pressure. Thank you, because what you're doing is you're showing me that I don't want this anymore. You're allowing me to choose a different way. You're allowing me to choose a feeling that I want. So it's almost like you are thanking and acknowledging the information that it's giving you. I hope that makes sense. So it's like, thank you for showing me what I don't want. Now I can actually, because of that, choose something different. So the pressure is simply pointing to where something is out of alignment. And then guilt is often highlighting just the old expectations that you're still carrying for yourself. And the gratitude is helping you pivot. It's helping you gently and without really beating yourself up, begin to turn the spiral into a more positive and supportive direction. And then the fourth step is where the real rewire happens. So we are then upgrading the thought, the belief. So this is, we're not jumping into something which doesn't feel believable, because, believability really does matter, because otherwise it doesn't work. So we're just going to look for a possible upgrade of the thought. It needs to feel like a stretch, but not a lie. So, for example, if you're thinking, God, I'm really feeling guilty, but I'm not working when I should be, maybe you could upgrade that to, I'm becoming someone who is actually prioritizing some downtime, and spending some time with my family. It's subtle, but it's different. Okay. It's not demanding instant change now. It is identity based. And this is so important, this identity piece. It is about becoming someone who is choosing differently. Okay, so we're just upgrading that thought or belief. You're becoming someone different. And then the final step 5, is literally letting yourself really step into that upgraded version of yourself. So really letting yourself feel into it. It's about becoming this new version with the updated software. So this is simply about practicing the feelings that you want to feel, not the ones that are your default. So this is about practicing the feelings, if they're, feelings of playfulness or ease or joy or flow. So using these to fuel your actions and to inspire you to take action, rather than those heavy feelings where you need that stick to beat you hard in order to take the action through the guilt and the pressure. So just really feeling those feelings. And this is why I love using breathwork and my audio recordings and all of this, because it really helps you dial up those feelings, and it feels so good. And what we want is for those to become our new wiring, for those to become our default. And that is super powerful. It is simply about practicing the state that we want to be in, that we want to live in, even for a few moments. That is the rep. That is the practice. So to sum up, in order to reduce and potentially remove even the feelings of pressure and guilt as the fuel for your goals and ambition, which ultimately make us feel exhausted and burnt out, and instead create from a place of inspiration, of ease, of joy, of flow, we have to choose a different fuel. And how we do that is creating new pathways, by being in a different way. So step 1, catch your old conditioning and notice when the pressure and guilt show up. Step 2, shift your state and break the pattern with 3 deep breaths. Step 3, add in some gratitude. So thank you for showing me what I don't want, is what you can be grateful for. Step 4 is upgrade the thought or belief that you might be having. Remember, you need to make it believable. So it could be something like, I'm becoming someone who chooses ease and joy. And step 5, we want to step into that upgraded version. We want to feel those feelings as much as we can to really embed them into our being. That's it. I hope that you have enjoyed this episode. I hope you've been able to take something from it. If you take nothing else from today, though, just let it be this. We all have a choice of how we approach anything, because ultimately all we have is this present moment. So if you don't want to feel the heaviness of pressure and of guilt in this present moment, you can choose different feelings, better feelings, feelings that you want by practicing and rewiring those better feelings. You can either get to your goals with force and pressure, with grit, with burning yourself out and by feeling heavy and really miserable, or you can choose to be playful, to be calm, to be excited, to be joyful. It is a choice, and it's not always easy. It is a practice, and it does take repetition, but it is a super powerful upgrade, which I, for one, am going to keep on practicing because I am already noticing some big shifts. Thank you so much for listening. I really do hope you've enjoyed this episode and are going to start to implement some of the things which I've spoken about. If you are interested in coming and working with me, if you feel like you could do with a little bit of help with this, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I absolutely love doing this kind of work. So just get in touch and we can take it from there. Thank you so much for listening. I will be back next week. So in the meantime, take lots of care. Lots of love. Bye. Before you go, just to let you know that you'll find a selection of gentle, practical offers at really accessible prices over on my website. They're all designed to support your everyday breathing, to ease anxiety, and help you build a more resilient, flexible nervous system so you can feel calmer and bring a little more steadiness into your daily life. Everything I share is designed to meet you where you are and to fit into real busy lives. Just go to pollywarren.com and click on the resource library. If you'd like to stay connected between episodes, you can also find me over on Instagram at Polly Warren Coaching. This is where I share simple reminders and tools and reflections to help you come back to calm throughout the week. And if you're enjoying Take a Breath, it would mean so much if you could take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. It really does help this podcast reach more women who might need a little space to breathe too. Thank you so much for being here and for taking this time for yourself. And remember, sometimes all you need to do is take a breath.